Isn't it wonderful if you create content that others choose to share with their audience? Making your content shareable is one of the many things to consider when you repurpose content. In this episode, I will share some practical tips on exactly how to do that. Listen on. You're listening to the Content 10x podcast, where it's all about content repurposing. I'm Amy Woods, and I'm here to help you maximize your content and find smart ways to get your message in front of more of the right people, whilst also saving time. Let's get started. Hello and welcome to the Content 10x podcast. I'm Amy Woods, the founder of Content 10x and your host for this podcast episode. Thank you so much for tuning in. Whether it's your first time listening to the show or if you're a long-term listener, it really is great to have you here. Now, the Content 10x podcast is all about ways that we can maximize and repurpose our content. So we're all about finding smart ways to do more with less when it comes to content. I'm really excited to cover this topic with you today, which follows on from my conversation with Disseminate's founder, Bradley Keenan, a few episodes back in episode 291, where we talked about employee advocacy and how you can maximize your content and expand your message through your employees sharing content with their audience. Building further on that, in the last episode, episode 292, I looked at the science behind why people share content. After all, it's all very well talking about how powerful it is when people share your content, but what would motivate them to do so? Why would somebody share your content? So that's what I talked about in the last episode. If you haven't listened to those two episodes yet, I highly recommend you do so. I'll put the links in the show notes. In this episode, I'm going to take the theme a little bit further and look at some practical ways that you can create content that your employees and your team will be happy to share, and of course, how you can use repurposing to do this. So we're going to look at what employee advocacy is and how to get employees to buy in. So if you didn't hear my interview with Bradley Keenan, no worries, we're going to do a quick recap on that. We'll then look at the types of B2B content that can be repurposed with sharing in mind and the important considerations for creating B2B content that you'd like to see your employees and team amplify. But before I get to the main topic, just to mention some exciting news, we have completely updated the Content 10x Toolkit. This online resource is made up of checklists, video tutorials, step-by-step guides and more on how to repurpose and maximize your content. Whether it's videos or podcast content, written content, we've got you covered in the Content 10x Toolkit. It also takes you through launching your own podcast. If that's something you're interested in, we tell you exactly how to do that in the toolkit. It's 100% updated and ready for you on our website. So just go to content10x.com/toolkit. Okay, before I get to the practical steps to creating content for this purpose for sharing, let's just remind ourselves what employee advocacy is. So it's when your employees promote your business via their own profiles to their own audiences. It's a powerful marketing strategy because it's your organization's content or content about your organization created by your employees that's reaching an already interested and trusting audience. And of course, it's free. So if you are creating and distributing content that is authentic and resonates with your employees and aligns with their goals and values, then you stand a very good chance of having a successful employee advocacy program. But of course, you have to create that content. So what type of content can you create and repurpose for this strategy? Now, I covered this in the last episode in some detail, but to summarize, people will share content that they relate to. They will share content that makes them look good, maybe intelligent and expert in something, maybe it's funny or entertaining. And they'll also share content that aligns them with their beliefs, or often people share content if it shows them to be a part of a group or organisation that they want to be seen to be aligned with. I think a key point is that when people share content, they are thinking about how they want to be perceived by their audience. So if we're clear that it's great to have your employees and team members sharing your content with their audience, and if we're clear that some content is going to be more shareable than others, and that we should try and think about creating content people would actually want to share, then that brings us to the question. In the B2B content world, what kind of content can you create and then repurpose that's highly shareable? I have a few ideas that I'm going to share with you in this episode. So let's look at event content. Events create so much content, and if your organisation is involved in events, you really want your employees to be enthusiastically sharing information pre and post events. So pre-event content should be really good-looking, eye-catching promo content that employees would be proud to share. So they want to be associated with this great event. Don't skimp on making the content look good in the build-up. If you're running the event, then you can ensure the content looks good enough to share. But if you're involved in someone else's event, let's say you're exhibiting or speaking or sponsoring, and the event provides you with poor looking content that no one is going to proudly share, then create your own instead. We've been there before. That's what we've done in the past. Better to promote the event in the best way for you, your team, and your audience. If you make longer form content for the event, let's say articles and videos, then repurpose them into promo material by making sure it's broken down into easy to share posts, videos and graphics for social media. So remember to make it super shareable. It should be clear and jargon free. Then during the event, there are so many content opportunities. Things like photos and videos behind the scenes, setting up stands, maybe photos and videos of your CEO or another representative of your company preparing to go on stage and then delivering a talk. There might be photos and videos of your team mingling with attendees at the event. This is all great for repurposing into bite-sized, appealing content for social media. Again, don't skimp on making sure that it looks good. If your company is involved in a great event and there's really good content to show for it, great videos, photo montages, carousels, and so on, the chances are employees would be proud to share this because it associates them with a great organisation that's out there doing really good things at really great events. It makes them look good and it makes them a part of something to be proud of. And as we've discussed, they are the kind of reasons why people would share content. So try and make this an easy decision for them when it comes to event content. Another example of where there might be opportunities to create content that your team would be willing to share is when you have team meetups or company team building experiences. Similar to events, these meetups can provide content gold. There's so many content opportunities. When we looked at what motivates people to share content in the first place, a key driver, aside from making them look intelligent or funny or interesting, was to look like you're part of a movement or a group. That's often a reason why people are happy to share content. So if your team are proud of who they work for and their team, and they are likely to be happy to share posts or photos or videos about team meetups, then think about what content they might share. Be sure to plan this in advance. What are you going to create? Your content has to hit that emotive button that makes people want to share and be associated with it. So when creating the content or getting ready to post a picture or a post about your team meetup or company get-together, think, would members of my team want to share this? Ask yourself, if you were in their shoes, would you share that content? And if you're not sure, then how can you change or repurpose it in some way to make it more shareable? The next example of where shareable content could come from is research. So if your company has done some research and released a study or a white paper or report or something similar to that, then members of your team might be more than happy to share some of the outcomes of this research. Coming back to why people share content, this content can make them look like an expert. It can make them look intelligent and interesting and at the forefront of their industry. But sharing a big, long report or the 2-hour webinar discussing the report is quite unlikely. So make it easy for them. Repurpose the report into snackable content. Distill points and statistics or findings down into great, shareable, engaging image carousels for LinkedIn or eye-catching infographics and quote graphics and so on. This jargon-free, simple and shareable content is the kind of content that, if done well and repurposed well, then your team and your employees are likely to want to share. And a final example of when you might have content that your employees will share is when your organisation is launching a product or service. There's likely to be top, middle and bottom of funnel content for a product or service launch. So think about how you can repurpose this content into content that employees would share. For example, your top of funnel content might be raising awareness of the pain points that your product or service addresses, and it will be a valuable piece of content. So repurpose this useful content into the kind of content that your team would share with their audience, where it would position them as an expert or in a position to be helpful. Of course, this will depend on who they are in their audience and how close they might be to the pain points in the first place that the product or service addresses. But if you create content that shares the innovation of the company and highlights the company as a leader, then your people will be more willing to share something that shows them working for a company that leads. And finally, of course, it's not just about the content, but the timing and the format as well. Consider the platforms you want to invest the most time in and create and repurpose content for those specifically. And if you want people to share content, often you need to strike while the iron is hot. So timing is everything. So there you have it. Creating and repurposing content for employee amplification bears many considerations. It needs to be content that people want to share, easy to consume, jargon-free, in the right format, the right timing. And we also need to consider the psychology of why anyone shares content, which is often centered around how they want to be perceived and managing their own personal brand, so to speak. So I hope you enjoyed this podcast episode and our new format for how we plan our content and our episodes, because we're trying a new approach where we're going deeper into specific themes and covering each theme off over the course of 3 consecutive episodes, kicking off with a guest expert. So the next episode will have a new guest talking about a new topic that we'll then dig a little bit deeper into over the couple of episodes after that as well. So I'm very much looking forward to releasing that. But before I go, just to mention, if you need any help with your content repurposing, then we offer a fully done for you content repurposing service for B2B businesses. Just head to content10x.com/services to find out more about how we might be able to help you. Whether you have webinars that need repurposing, maybe virtual, hybrid or in-person events, videos, podcasts, reports, white papers, we are working on loads of really interesting projects at the moment, helping B2B companies with exactly that. So speak to us about how we can unlock the potential within your content. Okay, that's a wrap. All that's left to say is thanks so much for listening. Happy repurposing, and I'll catch you in the next one.